Welcome, everyone. My name is Jacob. Thank you for joining me. This is Hunt Detail, and we are in the midst of April. Hope your off season is going well, and wanted to talk a little bit about e-bikes for hunting purposes. And I got to tell you, the e-bike category is massive. There are lots and lots and lots of brands, and some of that may be just, I guess, white labeling is the term, where someone is purchasing. Uh, from a Chinese manufacturer and then slapping their logo on it. But there's a lot. And I've been spending a lot of time trying to dive into this category to understand where there's value, where there's imposters, and where the real, what I really want from an e bike standpoint. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I'm going to get into that. This is going to be a two-part series. This week, I'm going to get into some of the stuff at a high level. Next week, my commitment to you all is to sort of give you my top 5 to 10 so that you can sort of take a look at them on your own. Now, I will have a spreadsheet that will be available for you to download. Just go to the Hunt Detail Instagram page, give me a follow there, and you'll click on a link in my profile. And there's a lot of spreadsheets that I create, and I share them all with you so that you can download and analyze and look at the data that I've put together in these evaluations. On the Hunt Detail YouTube channel, which I would also encourage you to subscribe and follow, is where I will take these large categories and try to look at them holistically and then narrow it down to where I think the value is in that category. Because a lot of times you'll find things on YouTube where someone's giving you a review of a singular bike that they have with them, or though maybe they have two or three, but they don't, it still doesn't give you a broad look at the category. And that's often where I like to start. I want to start with the category and then understand where the gaps are or where the value is and that sort of thing. And then narrow it down to a single brand or 5 brands or whatever. And so that's my approach on the Hunt Detail YouTube channel, is to look at these categories in a very broad sense. Now, what that means is that I'm looking at a lot of brands and then I have a spreadsheet. What it doesn't mean, though, is that I'm not testing these bikes. I'm not testing them the way that you might see. So I may have a recommendation in the top 5, and it may turn out to be a piece of junk. But that's the point, is that where you sort of can look at my cheat sheets, look at my rankings, and then go a little bit further and find somebody that has tried and used XYZ brand. And you can say, oh, okay, they had a good experience. Maybe then this is how I can make a purchase decision. So I think it really helps to understand a category. I try to do that with trail cameras. I try to do that with climbing sticks, saddle platforms, saddles. I do look at broadhead performance on the Hunt Detail YouTube channel. So I would encourage you to go there, give it a like, subscribe, follow. There will be a video for this content at some point down the road, but you're sort of getting the sneak peek before that hits the YouTube channel. So before I get into that, this came across my radar and I wanted to share this with you. The Kawasaki Corleo you've all seen those videos online of a sort of a robot that can do different things, whether it's walk or jump or do a cartwheel or dance. And I think the technology there is going to get really strange really quickly, and really maybe even concerning on some level, but uh, sort of sci-fi on a sci-fi level. But uh, the Kawasaki Corleo is like one of those, like a robot horse, if you will. I would encourage you to go check this out online. Go on YouTube or just Google it. They just rolled this out, and it would really change things for those of you that backcountry hunt public land. I mean, this could be a bad thing where you're riding a Corleo like a horse up a mountain or through a range, and it would ostensibly help. You could maybe even have one carry your pack and one that you ride. I don't know, but it now the videos are clearly CGI. They're not people actually riding these things. I think this is sort of a concept that they're investing in. They're probably wanting to see how the market, what the market says or how the market responds. And ultimately, I thought it was really interesting. It could be one of those things where as cell signals start to cover our entire planet, and there's very few places you can go at some point in the near future where you could go to get away from a cell signal. I think the same thing is going to happen, obviously, with technology like this, where it's like, oh, I'm 10 miles back, and then here comes somebody on a Corleo, an electronic horse, a robot horse, and the only limitations really are, I guess, the battery life or water or those sorts of things. So, very interesting. Encourage you to check it out, and sort of fits within the concept of what we're talking about here with e-bikes. Now, I will say that this for my purposes, I think an e-bike would have helped me when I went to Wyoming 2 years ago and Colorado last year. I mean, actually, I know they would have. I know an e-bike would have. Now, for me, when I go out west, I'm going solo, and I don't have. I'm packing a lot, and I sometimes I just feel like it's too much. It's just like the idea of packing a bike is just like it's a little much. You're throwing like it. Eventually, it feels like you're driving with a house. And but I think I mean, I think of that Wyoming hunt, and a bike would have been just a game changer. And I didn't bring it, and I should have brought it, even just a regular pedal bike. And when I was in Colorado last year, a pedal bike would have helped. Really, an e-bike would have been better because of the steepness of the terrain that I was going on. But it was both in both situations, I was using existing like logging or fire roads, that sort of thing. And so there are um, there are a lot of things that I mean, a lot of things to pack. I'm starting to think that the e-bike is something I need to pack, even if I'm not anticipating using it. What I was looking for originally, but when I started down this track, is something that would fold up. But I quickly learned that you really the type of bike that you want is probably not going to fold in half. And so there's one of the things that I did learn, and I'll start here, is you have three different classes of e-bikes. For some of you, you may already know a lot of this information, but there might be some other things in here that you uncover. There's three classes. One, the first class or class one is no throttle, but a limit of up to 20 miles an hour. Class two has throttle and a limit of 20 miles an hour. And then a class three is no throttle up to, I believe, 28 miles an hour. So those are your three throttle or your three classes, and you really you really have to check your state regs. And part of this is I will have a link in my with along with a spreadsheet, a link to sort of the state policies of as it relates to e-bikes, because you could get a class 3 e-bike and you could get to a particular state and realize that they don't allow a class 3 e-bike on that bike trail or on that path, or they consider it a motorized vehicle or whatever. And so it's really important to determine what what you want from that point in terms of the states that you hunt. Now, I think what's really interesting is that there are some e-bikes that have an adjustable setting where you can transition from a class 1 to a class 2 to a class 3. And that is really compelling because depending on where you are, you can set up your bike to that setting. On the other end of the spectrum, there are some e-bikes that are none of those classes that go on they won't list the maximum speed, but they are clearly faster and not they're clearly faster than 28 miles per hour. So ultimately, that's some things that I learned about the bikes out of the gate. Now you're going to have to look at your state specific laws if you're going to be going out of state. Another key learning was a lot of the bikes that you see on Amazon or at Costco are hub drive systems. So the motor is in potentially the rear wheel. Sometimes you have all-wheel drives where I think you could have a motor in the front and the back. But these hub drive bikes don't do real well with hills. Now I'm sure there's some exceptions to this rule, but in a general sense, your mid drive, which is in the gearbox of where the pedals attach, your mid drive bikes are your best bikes for hilly terrain. So if you're looking at an e-bike at Costco or on Amazon, or even something that's in the $1,000 to $2,000 range, that's even on somebody that sells a hunting bike, I would encourage you to ask whether it's a hub drive or a mid drive. My feeling is that you want a mid drive because it's something that has a better torque as it relates to hilly terrain. And you might say, well, I don't really, I hunt farm country. It's flat. It's not really that hilly. And I'm like, that's fine. But if you ever want to go anywhere, I think you probably want something that can handle hills, and you want that versatility. And I'd rather drop $1,000 to $1,500 into a mid drive bike that might cost me, somewhere between 4 and 6. I'd rather put that $1,500 towards that than buy a hub drive bike that is only going to work for certain situations. And I don't think I just don't think you want to go that route, especially as hunters. As we, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably someone that likes to cover terrain, and you want something that can handle the hills. So when it comes to the battery, some bikes can offer a dual battery where you have two batteries attached. Some it's singular, and you're looking at a lot of the bikes have something in between 15, 17, up to 30 amp hours, and that the higher the amp hours, the further of the range of the bike you're going to have. Now, obviously, there's a lot of variables there. It depends on how much you weigh. It depends on sort of how much the bike weighs as well. And so if you have a 17 amp hours for 1 hour, it can run at 17 amps, or 1 hour it can run at 20 or 30, and that can have a big impact on the range. And I'll give you some examples. So for a 25 amp hour per hour battery, you're looking at maybe a range of 65 miles. If you have something that's 30, I've seen quotes up to 90 miles, and I'm basing this on the websites, not my own experiences. There is some variability here. I mean, some of them will sell, you can purchase a dual battery and ostensibly double, what you might be capable with. But I think it's important as you go down this road to really think about, maybe you want the biggest battery that you can get. And some companies offer really large batteries as it relates to amps per hour, because we've all been there. You want to go a little bit further. You need to go a little bit further, and you want your bike to be able to get you back. So I think the battery is really something that you need to consider as you evaluate this category. As it relates to the motor, there's lots of them that come in at under like a 500 watt or a 350 watt, but you really, in my opinion, you want something that's 750 watt or higher. A lot of them group around 750 to 1,000 watt motor. And what that means is more wattage equals more power. And that translates into torque. And obviously you want greater torque. Now, if you want something for general hills as a general mountain bike, if you're not really carrying something, I think you want something somewhere between 60, 80 to 95. It's Newton meters of torque. But we all know that we're going to be carrying stuff. Maybe you're using this to pack out a deer or maybe an elk. You want something with more. And so, what I'm seeing from a lot of these e-bike companies where you have a fat tire, the fat tire is about 26 inches in most of the cases. The Newton meters for that bike is somewhere in the neighborhood of 160, sometimes 200, sometimes as low as 90. And so I think that's an important consideration as we evaluate this category. What is the torque that you're going to get? Because you're going to be going up steep terrain, potentially with a lot of weight on your back. Maybe again you're packing out a deer, whatever. And I mentioned fat tires, 26 inches. Most of them are puncture resistant. So now let's talk a little bit about the weight of the bike. And I've been looking at that a lot because it's kind of intimidating when I see a bike weighs 100 pounds. Now, a lot of them have been settling in at 68 pounds, 70 pounds, 86 pounds. But then you have some that have a carbon fiber frame. And that's really intriguing to me. The idea of having something with 750 watt, 1,000 watt, 160 Newton meters of torque, mid drive that's with a good battery, 20 to 30 amps per hour, and then a carbon frame on top of that would really lighten that load for the bike, and I think make it ultimately more efficient. And I've seen some carbon frames. I'm looking at my cheat sheet here as 55 pounds for a carbon frame. And so when I see that, to me, I automatically am going to be, my eye is going to be automatically attracted to that because I would love something that's relatively lightweight, not only from the hauling standpoint and throwing it in maybe my car or my truck or on the trailer, but also just I think it's going to make the experience more efficient and more effective when I'm going up a ridge. And if it's 55 pounds versus 85 pounds. So another aspect that I'm looking at is the number of speeds, and the number of speeds can help create efficiency in the battery use and the use of the motor. So it's a lot like if you think about when you're pedaling a bike that has variable speeds, you can go to a smaller gear or a larger gear based on the terrain. If you're going up hill, you go to a smaller gear and you're able to sort of chunk that out or grind that out differently. And it's not you're using a lot of your weight at that point. And it's the same thing with the motor. As you can shift speeds, it's going to allow you to maybe be more efficient with that battery. And so it's another consideration because there are some that are single speed. And that might be fine for your situation, but I'm going to shy away from the single speeds personally. Now, some of the things that I'm not really evaluating yet, and I don't know if I will, is sort of the suspension, the app or the digital interface. I think those are things that I think are very, you know, hard to evaluate without using it. Hard to evaluate the interface of the app or the digital controls on the bike. So that's going to have to be something that you'll have to evaluate on your own terms. Now, the other thing that I am looking at is a heavy duty chain. There's a KMC chain that seems to be a lot of the higher end heavy duty bikes are using. And so does it advertise a really heavy duty chain? Because if that chain breaks, you're in a pickle because you've got a heavy object that doesn't really work. It doesn't unless it's rolling downhill. And then the other piece of it is the warranty. What kind of warranty does it come with? Does it come with a warranty? Some of them have really strong warranty programs. Some of them do not. Obviously, the more you pay, the more you can expect to have a really solid warranty. But those are some things that I'm looking at, and I would encourage you to look at. Again, next week I'll have part two and really give you some final rankings. What I will tell you is I'm going to give you some of the brands not to look at because they just don't have bikes designed for our needs. So these are brands that are really designing bikes for the city commuter or someone that wants to use it in a neighborhood or a park with no hills. And so there's Vivi, Buzz, Turn, Appius, Vilaton, Tenways, Rad, Jetson. So you've got a lot of bikes here that really don't have anything for us. And then I have looked at no less than probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 brands at this point. But within each brand, they have multiple bikes that could fit our needs. They have maybe 7 hub drives and 2 mid drives or some variation of that number. And so I focus in on the mid drives, and some of those are high end mid drives that have carbon frames, and some of them are a little lower end where they have an aluminum alloy frame or they have a smaller motor or a larger motor, that sort of thing. So lots more research to do, lots more brands to look at, but very interesting and very exciting and very expensive when you start looking at the prices. I will say a lot of them top out at $6,000. I see here's another one. Here's one for 7. And then the good news is that there are some that are in the $2,000 to $3,000 range. These are lesser known. Like a lot of things that I try to look at is I try to include other brands that are not in the hunting category. And a little bit like when I did the puffy jacket review, I looked at a ton of puffy jackets outside of the hunting category. An Eddie Bauer jacket was $50, and it really performed beautifully in terms of that temperature challenge. And you can find that on the YouTube channel. But for $50, that puffy really performed well, and that's what I'm trying to find here. I mean, we could obviously think of some hunting brands that, by the way, are really solid options. It's just really expensive, and my objective is to find options that maybe are as good, or maybe I give up a little bit, but I'm saving myself $3,000 to $4,000, and that's important. I mean, all of the features, all of the technology may be great, but if I save myself $3,000 or $4,000, I might not even miss some of that stuff. And we all know it. When we've bought appliances or cars, there's always the high-end stuff, and then there's the stuff that really just it's a vehicle. It gets us from point A to point B, and that's really what I'm trying to look for, as opposed to getting the Corvette. I want the Camry. So hope this is helpful. Please give this podcast 5 stars on iTunes. Share it. And we'll talk more next week about the search for the hunting e-bike. All the best.